As some of you may know, I am a musician, and I do transpose music and arrange music. So, I just wanted to give a few tips of how to arrange music for different groups. Today I'm just going to talk about bowed string instruments, like the violin, viola, cello, bass, the ones that are the most popular. Even though there are probably some in other countries that aren't as popular as those, I just wanted to talk about each of those. Usually in each group of instruments, when composing for instruments, string instruments, you'll mostly come across two violin parts. You'll want to have two violin parts, a viola, a cello, and if you include the bass, then the bass is included in there too. That's for a regular string orchestra. If you get into like some of the harder music, then you'll find that even the violas, the cellos, and the basses can split into two groups between the sections too. But the standard scoring, which is the way it looks in the score, is you have two violin parts, violin 1 and violin 2, and then a viola and a cello. That's if you have like a string quartet, where the first violin is the soprano line, second violin is the alto, viola is the tenor, and cello is the bass. And even though the cello is scored higher than the bass, well, pitched higher than the bass, the cello is still the bass in the situation because it's the lowest instrument in the score. If you have a string trio, you'll most likely either have a violin, viola, and cello, or just a violin, two violins, and a viola. Just depends on the composer of the work. Each instrument has its own sweet spot. The spot on the range of the instrument, the part of the range of the instrument that sounds the best when played on the instrument. Even though the violin goes down to a G below the treble clef staff, that isn't usually the sweet spot on the instrument, unless it's a second violin, and then when you get lower on the instrument it sounds better. First violin and second violin kind of divvy up the part of the range of the sweet spot, because you have to have a soprano and alto line, which the soprano and alto line are pretty similar in range because they overlap a little bit. They can overlap a little bit, I should say. They don't always. But usually if you're doing like a simple score, you'll want one line for each instrument. If it's a regular string orchestra, then you'll want a line for the first violins, the second violins, the violas, the cellos, and the basses. That's 5 individual lines. You usually want to keep the bass at one single line. That way you don't have a division in the basses. But the other parts, the cello, the viola, and the violins, you can have divisions in their parts to create harmonies to the main melody. As you may have seen on my YouTube channel, I have an arrangement for brass quintet for brass ensemble, written in a quintet style, 2 trumpets, a French horn, trombone, and tuba part. But that came from a string orchestra score where there were 2 violin parts, a viola, a cello, and a bass. And the violins, viola, and cello went to the 2 trumpets, the French horn, and the trombone, and then the bass obviously went to the tuba. And in the original score, there's just one line for the bass. There was mostly one line for the cello, except at the end of the score where it split off into 2 lines. There was one line for the viola, which split into 2 at the middle end. And for the violins, there were 2 lines for each of them. So that was about 10 individual lines at the very end. But that came from a string orchestra score, so I had to do some transposing and arranging for each of the parts, so it would fit into the range and sweet spots of the different instruments in the brass ensemble. But that's one example of arranging and transposing for different instruments. Another one was Ride of the Valkyries, that came from a cello quartet score, and I transposed it for 2 oboes, an English horn, and a bassoon, known as a double reed quartet or quintet, based on if you wanted to split up one of the notes into octaves apart in the main score. There was one part where one note went up to 2 different octaves. And then for the flower duet from Lacme by Delabes, It came from a flute quintet, 4 flute parts, followed by a bass flute part. So I arranged it for 2 regular flutes, or C flutes, 2 alto flutes, and a bass flute. Alto flutes are scored in the key of G, which gives it a different range and key signature. So does the English horn. It has the key, it's scored in the key of F. Not meaning that it's always in F major, but it's always in a different key signature than the other instruments. And I could spend all day listing the different instruments that I use in my different scorings and their ranges and their keys and all that, but most of the arrangements that I do come from different scoring for different instruments. And the one that I'm working on right now, the Queen of the Night aria, comes from the from Mozart's Magic Flute opera. And it's pitched in the range of the piccolo for the singer. So I put the piccolo on the singer part, the soloist part, and then it's for a woodwind quintet, so that consists of a flute of some sort, oboe of some sort, clarinet of some sort, a French horn, and a bassoon. So I switched out the flute for a piccolo. I just kept the regular scoring for the quintet, just for a piccolo, oboe, B-flat clarinet, which is the main clarinet that mostly everyone learns on, the French horn, which is in the key of F, can be switched out for an alto saxophone in the key of E-flat if you want a woodwind to switch out for that part instead of a brass instrument. And a bassoon, which is in the key of C, concert pitch. And I'm just using the regular orchestra score because that's all I could find on IMSLP website and public domain was the pit orchestra score with the opera singer part. And yeah. So I usually score, take a chamber ensemble, or in this case it's a pit orchestra, and score it for another chamber ensemble, or just a chamber ensemble, which you can choose from a variety of different chamber ensembles, but I'll cover that in a different video. This one's just basically for the bowed string instruments, the string instruments that use a bow in the orchestra. So thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you later. Bye!